Greetings. You're listening to the CEIE podcast at Seattle University in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, where life is about making meaning.
Dr Alterman is an American historian, journalist, author, media critic, blogger, and educator. You are the CUNY Distinguished Professor of English and Journalism from Brooklyn College and author of 11 books from 1995 to 2020. 12 books, right? Actually, 12. You were the liberal media columnist for The Nation, contributing writer there for the American Prospect. There's so many things that you've done.
When I began my career, I thought my job was to speak truth to power and make things better.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided that didn't work, that people just didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided my job, since I was writing a media column, like I wrote one for 25 years for The Nation, as well as some other places,
Mm-hmm.
I thought my job is to embarrass the people who are doing terrible job in the mainstream media and are famous and make them do a better job. And that didn't work either because they're unembarrassable. So my job ended up being just telling people, you're not crazy. Like, here's the evidence for what you're thinking and feeling. And it's okay to think and feel that way, even though the mainstream media don't see the world that way and don't present it to you that way.
Your first work, Sound and Fury, the making of the Punditocracy, which came out in 1992, won the George Orwell Award. I know you don't need me to say all that, but I want the listener to understand.
And coined the word punditocracy, which is in the OED now.
You took aim at TV commentator George Will, roundtable host John McLaughlin, and others. I mean, this is the question of the punditocracy. And as you mentioned, your earlier comments, like what does it mean to really take issue with the kind of idiocracy around us? But this image of sound and fury signifying nothing. In many ways now, I want to ask you, is this a more dangerous time than it was then? If you were to write this text now,
Things are so much worse now than I ever could have imagined in so many ways. I often think about this. I've been complaining about the media and the Republican Party and the inability of the media to hold conservatives to any standard of truth or even logic.
Yeah.
But my God, I never could have anticipated or even imagined how terrible things are.
When did you start to note that kind of slippage, and when did it become for you more concerning than, say, just ironic, but tragic, and more than just disgusting, but dangerous?
The danger was always there. I mean, if you look back at the media coverage of Joe McCarthy, he was just making stuff up. He couldn't keep straight the number of communists he was alleging to find everywhere he looked. He would give a different number every day. And the media never called him on that. What they did was they said, Joe McCarthy says so-and-so is a communist. And then they would go to the person and say, are you a communist? And the person would say, no. And then they would just print the two together and let the reader decide. One is the junior senator from Wisconsin, and one is just some guy. And they wouldn't take a position on it.
Yeah.
And so McCarthy was shamelessness that the media would repeat whatever he said because he was quotable as a senator. At some point, the entire Republican Party invested in this notion of shamelessness and went further and further. Reagan, I suppose, is a turning point. George W. Bush is a turning point with his arguments on behalf of the Iraq War, both before and after. But then I think when Obama became president, things really shifted because the idea of a Black president who was sort of conversant with the ideas of academia and the left, who read, Marcuse and Adorno in college. This was incredibly offensive to a lot of people. And the media wanted to appeal to these people. And racism had never gone away, of course. To be clear, I think everyone is racist to some degree, but most of us try to keep it to ourselves and understand that it's our problem, not try not to make it anyone else's problem. My daughter's always saying, Dad, you're such a racist. And I'm like, so are you. She goes, I know.
I know. Is she Gen Z? Like Gen Z is right.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, right. Because it's in the system, right? The system admits that. Yeah, what you just.
The fact that Barack Obama was a literal African American with the middle name Hussein, it sort of opened up floodgates of allowable racism, which took the form of birtherism. And Trump is stupid and uninformed, but he's also a genius.
Yeah.
And I distinguish genius from intelligence. Genius is insight that often comes without a person understanding what they know.
That's helpful. Yeah.
And Trump has a genius for communicating with certain kinds of people, knowing what they want to hear and saying it. He probably couldn't even explain it himself. I'm sure he couldn't actually. And so he tapped into this racism thing. And we've always known that fear trumps hope. We're in this situation. It's crazy. Trump is a convicted digital rapist. He supported an insurrection.
Right.
He's a con man. He had an affair with a porn star while his wife just had a baby. He's an anti-Semite. And the things he says are so far from making sense. It's unbelievable.
So what does that tell you about the moral? Does it come down to the moral barometer of a country? I mean, I think that might be an easy win, right?
Well, the thing is, the other thing Trump figured out is that
Yeah.
the same thing that McCarthy figured out, that he could say whatever he wanted
Yeah.
and the media would print it, particularly now with social media where you don't know where the information is coming from.
Yeah.
And people pick and choose their own sources of trusted media. You can
Yeah.
get away with anything.
Do you think that there's something about lying itself that Trump has allowed? He's opened a floodgate that allows a kind of permissibility on cruelty.
Definitely, he's coarsened our culture and invited violence into our politics in a way we haven't seen since before the Civil War. But Trump lies about what's in front of your eyes. It's amazing, particularly television media. The
Yeah.
most important thing to them is to be liked. Their Q ratings. The Q ratings are how
Yeah.
much the audience likes you.
Yeah.
And they won't call him on it because it seems disrespectful to do that to the president, or it makes them unlikable. So he gets away with 90% of it.
Demagogues are also, I mean, has a kind of demagogic personality, right? This is a person who people believe him when he recasts reality in this way. Why is he as a
I
personality
don't know. I don't
so
think they believe
effective
him.
at that?
I don't
You
think
don't
they
think they
believe him.
believe him? You don't think
No, I think they just like it. I think they think he's
is
on
it
their side.
so it's a charisma issue? They just really like him, like
No, no,
after the
no, no. They
Pennsylvania.
don't like him. They
Mhm.
like they like who his enemies are. They like the fact that he hates the people that they hate.
Yeah.
They like the fact that he says nasty things about people who they feel are oppressing them. People
Yeah.
like you and me.
And he's very good at, as you've mentioned, at tailoring that fear and targeting that animosity, right, toward others and cultivating that.
Yeah, I mean, blaming immigrants for everything.
Where does that form of lying lead a public in an election year like this?
Well, I mean, it's amazing. So I can tell you, we're actually facing a fascist threat. We're
Mhm.
actually facing someone who's saying that they're going to use the government to destroy their enemies, and we may be seeing our last election for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And every saying it out loud, and I'm almost glad I don't have a column anymore because I'd go crazy. I mean, it's just beyond what I could have imagined.
Can I ask you this? So it seems on one hand, the media is playing, or maybe other quarters of America are playing by the rules of a kind of liberal democracy where, oh, we need to hear both sides of the opinion. You know, we lose, some people win for a while and then they lose for a while. That's how it works in a liberal democracy. But this guy, he intends to win and everyone else will lose. You know, his impact is to win fully, and everyone else is a loser or an evildoer or deplorable, whatever you may call them. Like he has got very clearly in his mind, as you mentioned, what he intends to do after the win, which may be, I don't know, to suggest that January
Well, to
January 6th
some degree,
Patriots Day,
it's
you know, for
to
instance.
some degree, Trump is a symptom rather than a cause. I
Okay.
mean, he's the cause of some things,
Yeah.
but he's got a lot of people and a lot of money behind him. He's got the Heritage Foundation writing a 500 or 800-page book saying, "Here's how we're going to destroy our democracy
It's
bit
a
by
very
bit."
clear book. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got these funders like Leonard Leo
Yeah.
and these rich guys, rich Republicans who are so pleased with
Yeah.
the tax policies that they don't care about the country surviving as a democracy.
Yeah.
Um, Clarence Thomas, for instance, and Clarence Thomas's wife, they're breaking all the rules that we've ever understood to be the norms of the Supreme Court. In 2016, I said, if a Republican has to win, I kind of want it to be Trump because it would be interesting. It would be fun
Did you?
because he's so crazy, so unprepared,
Yeah.
and also he's so out of it that he won't be
Yeah.
able to get anything done. But
Right.
I had no idea how weak the political culture was and how strong the right wing fringe was, the white Christian
Yeah.
movement.
Right.
Um, and uh, and it's a much worse country now.
also how hungry the media was to have this kind of figure around, because there's a lot of money to be made by someone that you could create such a celebritization from.
Right. The head of CBS News says he may not be good for the country, but he sure is good for CBS.
Precisely that. What do you think in terms of, here we are months away from the US presidential election. It's a much closer race than anyone wanted to imagine, who might come from the ranks that you do or I do. For those who are looking at the future of a non-fascist state, this is not a good time for the future of Western liberal democracy in the United States.
Well, that's true of a lot of places, let's be honest.
True.
The problem is that people don't pay attention.
Yeah.
I don't think that people would vote for Trump if they understood what Trump really represented.
Okay.
And the media are not good at communicating it. I'm angry at Joe Biden for running again. He shouldn't have run again.
Yeah.
He should have, as he says, taken the win. He had a really good first term. He got a lot done. He saved the country from Trump.
Yeah.
And now he's put all that at risk. Unfairly. It's not his fault, but he should have recognized it.
Would you be willing to share, who do you think would have been a good contender in the Democratic Party for this election if you just had to say, 2 or 3 folks, anyone come to mind?
Well, I supported Elizabeth Warren in the last election. I think
Yeah.
she'd make a great president. She's just as old as Biden is, though.
Yeah.
I think the governor of Michigan is the most likely. Is the person people like the best, and is doing a great job, and is showing people what it means to be a Democratic leader. Gavin Newsom seems to me to be also someone who's got a lot of good qualities, although people tell me that he doesn't have a common touch.
This question of cruelty and what's been allowed to get out of the gate is one of the questions I wanted to ask you in particular about this, because there's a kind of perfidiousness that is unrecognizable, I think, to the American public in general.
I'm shocked. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea what was behind the door number 2.
Yeah. And here we
I had
are.
no idea how central this anger and hatred and racism and sexism and anti-gayness
Yeah.
and anti-Semitism was. I had no idea how widespread it was.
Yeah. And here we are in this
and,
moment.
and Trump has torn down the curtain and shown it to us. And it's a different country than the one I thought I was living in. This was my job to know this. And people who wrote about me or spoke about me, they said, stop whining about this country. You sound so unpatriotic. Why are you saying such terrible things about this country? And in fact, I was naive. So
I think that's a feeling I share, and I think a lot of us share. I know that there are major granting organizations. I don't say too much about this, like, Luce Foundation, Templeton Foundation, others who are looking at, what is possible for conflict resolution, new models that need to be developed, rethinking history. It's all on the table now.
If I didn't know, then hardly anybody. I'm sorry to say it this way. It sounds pretentious, but it was my job to know, and I worked hard at it. And yet I was clueless.
It doesn't at all sound pretentious to me. Let me ask you a couple more questions about this. First of all, it doesn't sound pretentious. I get the serious and earnestness with which it was your job, and how in earnest you took that. And you're kind of a guardian at the wall on that, especially when people are being critical. That's exactly the time to be more thoughtful about what it is you're observing, because you're getting closer to the bone, right, when people are being critical. And so here you are doing that work. And now as you look back, are you really serious when you say, hey, I didn't see it? Because you see a lot of things, or you made a lot of stellar observations about what happens in this country.
I didn't see the brazenness and the audacity and the lack of respect for norms that characterizes the conservative movement and what is now MAGA, and therefore the Republican Party. I knew that they were willing to bend every rule in their presence, but I thought that they had lines. Look at Lindsey Graham. Nobody could have imagined Lindsey Graham going from what he was to what he is.
Absolutely agree. I would never have seen that. Have you given some thought to, all right, this is where we are. What are the prospects for initial first steps, just the first steps toward any kind of, I don't even know what you would call it. Let me just say a few words. It's going to be too bold. Reconciliation, healing, clarification, redirect, whatever it may be. What's the first steps? What would be?
I don't think in those terms. Most people I know do, and they're nicer people
Sure.
than I am. I think in two terms. One is, how can we destroy these people? They need to be defeated. They need to go away. We need a Carthaginian peace. We're not going to get it, but they need to be fought. Liberals always come to gunfight with a fountain pen. The second thing, I think, my neighborhood went over 99% for Biden. Before the Dobbs decision, I felt like there wasn't really anything Trump could do to me and my family and my friends. Like, I live in this liberal enclave where we're reasonably well protected. I think I overestimated that as well. So, like, if this country wants to elect this lunatic, digital rapist, racist, anti-Semite, con man, criminal, it's not my country anymore. My country is New York. My country is the people who share my values. And if that's who they are, then I'm like in this little enclave of people, this saving remnant maybe of people who care about democracy and respect for difference and allowing people to be who they want to be and freedom of expression and freedom of ideas. I don't have any idea what to do about a country that would elect this guy at this moment in history. I just don't know. I give up. I'm giving into despair.
So is that a permanent state or is that a temporary setback?
I do what I can, and I used to have more that I could do when I had columns and regular things. I've been writing a lot lately in the New Republic about Israel and Palestine and free speech on that issue, and campus issues, and trying to define anti-Semitism as opposed to anti-Zionism and so forth. And I'm writing two books that are, one's a history book, one's a book in defense of public higher education, which I think doesn't get enough attention. I'm a professor at a public higher education institution that I think is deeply underappreciated. So maybe I'll be able to do some good there. But like I said, I did this for 30 years and look where we are. I'm a failure in that respect.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. People are in the country going to need to be able to look to luminaries and past examples, and also the honesty of the moment to be able to say what we saw coming and didn't. That's good, right? What's the read on history? That's what hasn't, and to also hear that this was a bit of a bolt from the blue for some, right? Who even as students of history who've been doing this and writing toward it with real integrity and insight, some things remain below the waterline of our national consciousness.
Yeah, another turning point, I guess I would point out, is Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich really recognized the power of audacity, the ability to tell a lie and to slander people and get away with it. And that was, and he said this. He gave Republicans, like, here are some words to use about Democrats that are the right words.
And he was a separatist in this regard, right? I mean, he did little things like he would keep Democrats and Republicans separate. Like, for example, what was the baseball game that used to celebrate together? Little things, sports together, anything to create a kind of separate tension that would reduce a bipartisan capacity.
Yeah, but he also, I mean, he pioneered hypocrisy, and then he still ran for president, and he was treated like a statesman.
And he was given a platform by noted journalists and the broadcasters that back them to be able to do that hour after hour. Fear in the world, when you look at the rise of popular authoritarianism, and we can see that that's going to continue to take place. When you look in the next, so this is a helplessly maybe unfair question, but as you look 10, 20 years forward, we have our work not just in the country but globally, right? There's a lot of
I get to say, look, I'm a historian. I don't know what's going to happen.
You're not going to look
for a lot of things happen that are unpredictable. I couldn't have predicted October 7th. I couldn't have predicted September 1st, September 11th, 2001. Things happen that change the hinges of history. I just, like I said, and particularly since I have to say, I've been humbled. Can you imagine thinking that on January 6th, 2021?
I thought that figures like Lindsey Graham and others whom you've mentioned would find their moral compass, and that if there was any moment for repentance from that side of the aisle, this was it.
I don't think about it in terms of moral compass. I just thought this is outrageous. This looks outrageous. How can anyone?
I thought it would. I'm naive in this regard. I thought that penny would drop and they would find something of integrity inside of themselves because these folks had, sure, it was outrageous, but they had stormed the Capitol like this. Like they I mean, if any other circumstance, we may have seen something much more dire than what happened on that day, right?
Yeah.
And but I think what stuns me more, and I want to ask you about this, close this conversation. The fact that so many Americans look past this experience and the not just the kind of public humiliation of it, but the danger of it, the fact that it was an assault on the government, it was an assault on the people, and that it was an insurrection that took place at the kind of prompting of a sitting president, and who is now running for a second term and may well be voted in, is somehow there's a historical amnesia in this country that never ceases to surprise me in that regard. It doesn't seem to matter.
I guess the only part, I mean, you said it better as well as, or better than I could say it. The only part I disagree with there is that's one thing that doesn't surprise me is the historical amnesia part. New York Times had an article about this, I think in today's paper, on the front page, that a lot of people are remembering Trump's presidency with rose-colored glasses, metaphorically speaking. I mean, what a catastrophe it was, the way he handled the pandemic and, the crazy things that went on. But particularly the pandemic, where so many tens of thousands of people died who didn't need to die, and that idiot was telling people to drink Drano, and he wanted to not let cruise boats come back because it would increase the numbers and that would look bad. Blaming China for everything. Unemployment was high.
Yep.
Inflation was going up, and yet he sold people on the fact that things were great. He's lost his mind far more than Biden has. Biden's lost a few steps, but Trump is demented, I think. There's evidence of it every day. He fell asleep in the trial today, on the day that we're taping this, his first day of trial. He fell asleep. Could you imagine if Biden fell asleep? So the media have sort of discounted so much about Trump. Like usually when Trump gives a speech to his rally, it's completely incoherent. And he gets who's president wrong, and it's all things go wrong, and he can't, and half the sentence don't make sense, but the media clean it up.
Yeah.
They report it in such a, they want to be respectful of him. They don't want to offend the people who like him. And the net result is they're putting out a red carpet for fascism and the destruction of the media.
I did want to ask you about white Christian nationalism alignment to Trump. Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
The only point I always make about white Christian nationalism is that the threat of violent anti-Semitism in this country entirely comes from white Christian nationalists.
Yeah.
That there is anti-Semitism on the left and right, but violent anti-Semitism, the kind that gets people killed and attacked, it's 100% on the right. Literally every single incident in 2022, literally every single violent incident of violence was right-wing violent anti-Semitism. And people want to both sides this for a lot of reasons. But the point is that I'm talking about anti-Semitism now in the context of this. The danger to Jews in this country is the same as the danger to gays and to blacks and to immigrants and to Muslims. And that's white Christian nationalism. The fact that some people hate Israel and are nasty to Jews about it, it's deeply unfortunate. The fact that you can't say anything nice about Israel on campus anymore, that's unfortunate. But the physical danger is 100% coming from the legitimization of white Christian nationalism.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll do it again sometime.
You've been listening to the CEIE podcast at SU. Visit our Theolab at religica.org or the renowned International Journal of Local Stories from around the world at theinterfaithobserver.org and participate in emerging opportunities at our main website. That's seattleu.edu/CEIE. Thank you.